Hi, Power Windows Day 2. It's the diagnosis part. How do you diagnose a Power Window that doesn't work? Well, it's actually a pretty simple circuit. I mean, go watch the first one again. But the part to remember is the motor needs power and ground in order to move. And then we switch those two to get it to move in the other direction. Now, I'm looking at this lovely vehicle. This is borrowed it from a neighbor. And excuse the spangly steering wheel. And the problem is this power window doesn't work on this side. And I have the key on, and I got nothing. Now, the way most people do this is they take their test light and they check and see, and I'd suggest doing this. I'm going to back probe that blue line. This blue line is my B plus, and I got this test light grounded, and I have B plus at the switch. So I'm going to see. Oh, by the way, the switch doesn't work from the other side either. We'll go over there in a minute. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go to my red line, which goes down to my motor. You know, that's a line that goes right down to my motor, and I'm going to check that and see if B plus is getting out. Yeah, it's getting out, although it is odd, up and or down, this line becomes hot, which that doesn't make any sense. And then I go to this green line, which is the other line that goes down to my motor, and I check it, and it lights up in either direction. So, that doesn't make any sense, but I am getting B plus. Now, a lot of guys would just stop here and go, well, the motor's getting B plus. It's a bad motor. The switch is switching 12 volts. What didn't I check? I didn't check ground. Well, how do you check ground? Well, ground is actually really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my test light, I'm going to take my test light, but rather than hook it up to ground, the clippy part, I'm going to hook the clippy part to my B plus. Come on, get in there, do something. There we go. Now, any place I touch this guy to ground, it'll light up. So now I have, instead of being a positive detector, I have a B plus detector, or a ground detector. So I am going to actually, let's see, I'm going to unplug this switch. Now, this switch, if you remember from the first lesson, this switch doesn't have a ground to it. Where does it get its ground from? It gets its ground from the other side. And that's what I'm going to test. Now, on this one, the two traveler lines, they travel over to the master switch, should rest at ground. It should be this green and white and this red and blue. And I'm going to check, and I got nothing. That means I don't have a ground. I'm going to check the other traveler line, and I don't have a ground. So the problem is I don't have, I don't have a ground. I've got a positive. Positive is working, but I don't have a ground. Well, why not? Well, honestly, these power windows worked just fine before. Then I just unplugged the master switch. If you unplug the master switch, this side loses its ground and it doesn't work. But pretend I don't know that. Now, before I button this up, I'd like to check the motor to make sure that the motor works. And I could do that quite simply just by jumping this switch. Okay, so I am going to jump. I'm going to take this guy. Here, I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to jump from my B plus. Oopsie. Always go in from the back when you're back probing. And then I'm going to go down to this green line. This green line heads right down to the motor. So now I've got B plus down at the motor on this green line. So I just got to deal with this red line, and this red line needs what? Well, it needs ground. So I'm going to back probe this guy. And then I've got my little jumper that's actually hooked up to ground right there. And I'm going to back probe, I back probed it in here. So I got ground in the red line. I got B plus in the green line. It goes down to my motor. And I'm going to, and there you go. Now I can make this go backwards quite easily by taking this out and switching it. B plus into the red. And I'm going to put ground into my green line. That should make my motor run in the other direction. Ta-da! So what I'm going to do, now I know the motor works. The switch I don't know about. I'm not sure if it works because I've lost my ground from the other side, but I'm going to go check the other side now. I'll show you how to diagnose the master switch. Hang on. So I'm going to use my handy dandy little gizmo test light that I use. And all this is just a brake switch with a couple of pins in the end. Now I'm going to back probe the two traveler lines that go over to the other side. And if you remember, that's the green and white and the red and blue. So this just makes it easier. It's also a brake light bulb, so it's actually quite bright. It draws a lot of amperage, and you see it lights up in both directions. So like the other side, it lit up in both directions, and it made me go, that doesn't seem right. Well, because I was on the ground side. So here, I know that this switch is working right because this guy tells me to. Now, if I just checked one side at a time, it would light up in both directions, but I wouldn't be checking the ground side. Get it? Now, if I were to check this and the light bulb didn't light either direction and the other window didn't work, well, I would assume, I would check power and ground on the switch. Use my little test light, hook it up to B plus, that blue line, and check and see if I had a good ground going in there. Load the circuit when I do it, because I want some heavy duty load on there to check the connections, voltage drop, loads, it'll scrub off some amperage. Anyways, so I want to, check ground, check B plus, check it under load, make sure it doesn't go away. If power and ground is good and I don't have the traveler's working, well, then it's a bad switch. Now, which side do you start on? Well, quite honestly, I start on whatever side. It's the easiest side. I usually start on the easiest side. So, if I have a passenger side power window that doesn't work, I'll usually hit that first. Just check motor. Now, here, in order of things that go bad, motor is always one of the first things I check. Make sure the motor works. The motor works, I'm onto the switch. Now, it could be this switch is bad, or it could be that switch is bad. So as long as I'm over there checking the motor, I'm going to check the switch. And then let's say those seem like they're okay, or I'm missing ground on my two travelers or one of my traveler. So the motor goes one way and not the other. You get it? So if it goes one way and not the other, the motor's not bad. It's wiring. This is a wiring problem. The motor doesn't move at all. Could be a bad motor. Could be wiring. Could be a bad switch. Could be a fuse. Getting off topic. Okay. Simple, easy, stupid. First thing I check is the motor. Second thing is, since I'm over there in that door, I'm checking that switch. Then I'm going to come back here, check my two traveler lines over there. If I'm missing something, come back over, bounce over to this switch, check my two travelers coming out of here. If these test good and they don't test good on the other side, well, it's a broken wire between the two. 99 times out of 100, broken wire is inside the pet driver's side door jamb. Why? Because this door opens and closes more often than any other door in the car, unless it's a a taxi or a limo. And then usually it's the back passenger door that acts up. But usually that would just affect the back passenger window or the back passenger door lock or whatever. Okay? I hope this makes sense to you. Remember, the switch rests at ground. You got to check ground too. And you got to check B+. And then the other tip is always check it under load. Because just a simple test light doesn't take a lot of load to light that guy up. Whereas that power window motor or power seat motors or any other motor you want to diagnose, because they're all the same, that requires a lot of amperage. I could have, test at open circuit voltage and it'll test fine. It'll just lead me right down the wrong path. Test it under load, see if power or ground disappears. And it's easy. Thanks. Subscribe to my channel. I don't know. Hey, how you doing? On the other side now. So here is my and I've already pulled up my master switch. Let's plug it back in. Plug back in my master switch. Now, this window does work. It did work. There it is. Now, let's say it didn't work and I wanted to diagnose this switch. Well, fast, easy, simple, stupid way to do it is, remember, this guy gets its power from, or this guy gets power and ground and sends ground over to the other side.